I am Jimbo Paris, and you are listening to The Jimbo Paris Show. All right. How's it going, everyone? This is Jimbo Paris here. Welcome to The Jimbo Paris Show. So today we have Jason, and he was basically from Vancouver. You know, he studied business in Trinity University, and he wrote the book called Sowing Principle. And he's here to kind of spread his word and help influence and motivate other people to reach his success as well. Let's see what he has to say.
Hey, Jimbo, thanks for having me.
It's my privilege. It's my privilege.
Where are you based? Where are you based out of?
Baltimore.
Oh,
Yes.
awesome. Never been to Baltimore, but I've heard good things.
Really? Okay. Where are you from?
Just outside of Vancouver, Canada.
Wow. That's nice. That's nice. You're the second person that I've had from Canada.
Yeah, I was just listening to your interview with that gentleman this morning, actually. I think the gentleman that rode across Canada, very inspiring.
Excellent. Great. But again, this is about you, though. So can you kind of tell me who you are, what you're about, and what your message is?
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. So my name is Jason Alcott. I wrote a book a couple of years ago called The Sowing Principle, but a little bit more about me. So I'm just turned 41 this last year. I live just outside of Vancouver. I'm married, got my beautiful wife, and I got 3 little girls. And so I wrote this book a handful of years ago, The Sowing Principle, where I woke up one day and realized I'd always wanted to write a book. I think there's a lot of people that do want to write a book. But I woke up one day and realized if a book wasn't going to write itself, I needed to actually sit down and do it if I wanted to do it. And I really had an idea in my mind that I wanted to be able to share just about the importance of what we do daily. And that's really what The Sowing Principle talks about. It talks about, how the little things that we do add up over time and actually sort of play out in our life. And I'm sure there's maybe like yourself, Jimbo, but there are many mornings I wake up and I look at it and go, man, how did I get here? Not that here is necessarily a bad place, but not that here maybe isn't where I expected I would be. Maybe that's in the relation to your health or your finances, maybe in your faith, whatever that is, your relationships. You have maybe there's a difference between where you are and where you think you should be or where you think you could be. And how do we, bridge that gap? Why is there a gap there? Was what I wanted to address in this book and talk about with people to give them sort of the tools of how do we bridge that gap.
So how did the sowing principle play out in your life?
So for myself, and it starts really with my wife. So there was a number of years ago, many years ago now, where I was younger and I started to identify that I had this list of things that I was looking for in my future wife. The character and values that I wanted her to have. And, God spoke really clearly to my heart after I'd written that list. And he said, Jason, this is a great list, but a woman with these attributes, with these values that kind of lives out a life this way isn't going to date the man that you are today. And that was obviously kind of a wake up call. And that sent me on a real journey of, okay, so what is the type of man that could potentially have, be married to a woman like this? How does he live his life? What does his day-to-day life look like? And so I started to make these small and tiny adjustments to my life that would hopefully move me in the direction of becoming more of the man that I believe that I am supposed to be, called to be, that I believe God wants me to be. And after that, eventually met my wife, and we got married, and we've been married for almost 7 years. And she's absolutely amazing. If you meet her, she's way out of my league, but it's that's half the fun, right? So, and so that's really the biggest way that's played out in my life. But there's so many other things that I look at in my life, and I'm going, man, it's just this constant. People think that we need to make massive, big changes to see massive, big changes in our life. But the reality is my experience is that I need to make the right decision, the tiny right decision on a daily basis to make massive decisions in my life over time.
That's quite interesting, because the first thing that came to mind was what was it? It was I think it was like a book that talked a lot about habit building. Is that something that you worked on? Like, habits are kind of similar to what you were saying. It's little tiny things that you do, and
Yes.
It leads to some big change.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's that great book by James Clear called Atomic Habits.
Right.
It's a
Okay.
good,
Yeah.
it's a great book. That I love that book. And James is, I mean, he's an amazing author, writer, and thought leader. I mean, he does a great deal of work right now that I really enjoy what he does. I see really habits as, yes, a component of, can you build a habit around some of those pieces that you want to have on a daily basis. And I think a lot of people, sometimes they think about habits and sometimes they only think about the bad habits. So they think about the stuff that they want to stop, right? I want to stop, maybe overeating, or I want to stop this or that, or the bad habits. But what about positive habits? What about the good habits that you can build into your life, that you can do on a consistent basis, that are just little tiny habits that you can, throw into your day, have a part of your day, that over time, yeah, on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't look like you're making any progress. But you wake up 5 years from now, and all of a sudden, if you were reading, 10 to 15 pages of a good book every day, which doesn't take very long, right?
Hmm.
5 to 10 pages of a great book, a day. How many books are you going to read in a year? How many books will you have read in 5 years? And what impact do you think that'll have in your life? It's going to be massive. But on the day when you wake up and you don't want to read because you're tired, or you don't want to read before you go to bed because you're tired, now all of a sudden you're setting yourself down that trajectory, walking in sort of this other direction, right? Away from, that sort of goal. And then you wake up and you wonder why you aren't the person that you think that maybe you should be.
Hmm. Excellent. And what were the first set of habits that you personally built when you started this journey of yours?
Yeah, so my habits very specifically were around my faith. Um, I recognized that, the woman that I wanted to marry was someone who was a person of faith and lived out sort of God's call in her life. And for me, I've looked at, okay, so what type of a man would do that? And for me, that was somebody that would read their Bible on a daily basis. And so I actually took the step of diving into my Bible on a daily basis, and it was just little bits, like little simple bits that I started to do on a daily basis, and slowly over time, that began to really impact my life in a really big way. So much so that I would say that habit has impacted my life more than anything else that I've ever done, more than my marriage to my wife, that sort of relationship that I have with Jesus, and learning about that part of my life and sowing into that part of my life has been hugely impactful. But it started with a very mechanical step that I didn't necessarily want. Like, it's not like I woke up and I was excited to do that on a daily basis, but it was really something simple. And I never beat myself up if I missed. That's another big thing too, right? Like, it wasn't like, oh, I
Mhm.
didn't do it yesterday, and I would feel guilty about it. It was no, like, you know what? I get another opportunity to pick up the rock this morning. I get another opportunity to try again today. So I didn't win yesterday, but I can win today, right? I can do it again, and sort of taking those steps forward. And so that was sort of the first step, and that's really had the biggest impact in my life.
Huh. So, would you consider your faith the foundation of everything else you've built on top of it right now?
I think for myself, yeah, it is the foundation. I think that the sowing principle and the idea and concept of it applies to every area of your life. So whether you live as a person of faith or not, it's affecting your health, it's affecting your finances, right? It's affecting your relationships. Whether you're a person of faith or not, it's irrelevant. This is happening in your life whether you want it to or not. What my goal with the sewing principle was to provide some language, give a framework, so that you could talk about what's happening in your life and be able to sort of look to the future and plan, how do you want to move forward to move in the right direction.
Hmm. But with you specifically, you built it off of your faith, right?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay. So, after your faith, what was the next thing that you focused on?
The next thing I think would probably be in my relationships.
Hmm.
I'm an introvert by nature. I prefer alone time. That's my, for those of us, for those percentage of people that are introverts out there, I have to be intentional in sowing into and building relationship with people, whether that be in my family or the people that I work with, the coworkers, the people that are part of my team. I'd much rather dive into a spreadsheet or a book, but I know that in order to actually be able to positively impact people's lives, have conversations, being able to connect with someone like yourself, that's an extroverted sort of, step in a direction. But I know I can't just write a book and put it on the shelf. I need to be able to connect with people like yourself, connect with an audience, connect with people that I know that this can benefit. And that only actually comes from building a relationship with people. And so I've had to sow into learning and still have a long way to learn to go. But how do I connect with people, not just through the pages of a book, but how do I connect with people one-on-one or over a Zoom or whatever that is, so that I can sow into them if they're looking or willing and want to have a conversation. That's probably would be the next step.
So now you mentioned the idea of building relationships. How did you build, relationships with other people? And do you think you use this kind of like how people network to enhance your business side as well?
Yeah, I would think I build relationships one the same way we all do, one step at a time, one conversation at a time. But I have to be willing to put myself out of my comfort zone to be able to have those conversations. I still find it's been really interesting because we had the pandemic, right? And sort of, for an introvert, people are like, I can't wait to get back into community. And I was like, this is great. I've been, been on my own for with my family for the last couple of years. I don't have to go out and talk to people. And now it's like, well, you should come to this event and we should network and meet more people in our industry and things like that. And I'm like, okay, got to get back in that frame of mind of putting myself out there and having those conversations and be willing to say hi. It's amazing how when you say hi to someone and give them a compliment, how much that just opens up a conversation. You can learn so much about their life. Not that I'm trying to push anything on anybody, but the more you learn about them, maybe there's an opportunity for us to chat, about the sowing principle in their life, or maybe there isn't, and they just need to be encouraged to continue to pursue what they're going after, their dreams and their goals. And I like to think that I can do that when I have conversations with people.
Mm-hmm. And this may be a question that you may have answered before, but why did you name it the Sowing Principle?
That's a good question, because it lies in the biblical principles of sowing and reaping, which is talked about through the Bible. So you reap what you sow, and it says really clearly in there, don't be deceived. A man reaps what he sows. And so there's a couple of books that were really informative in my upbringing that helped me frame the sowing principle. One of them is a book called The Slight Edge by a gentleman named Jeff Olson, and another book is called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And they're talking about compounding, which is often talked about in financial terms, and the slight edge, which was very much talked about in success terms, so kind of business success and personal success. I wanted to tie it all the way in and say, hey, this concept, this idea of the importance of what you do on a daily basis, it affects every part of your life. And for myself, that meant to incorporate faith, right? I wanted to incorporate my faith journey into that idea of how important the tiny steps that I take are on a daily basis.
Okay. And, you talked about your journey. You talked about how you developed your faith. You developed your ability to kind of communicate. You did all of these things, but how did you start teaching these to other people? Are there any specific techniques that you use to cultivate habits in people? How does this work?
Yeah, it's been very much an application of the sowing principle for myself to write the book, right? Like I talked about, like the book isn't going to write itself. So I had to make some changes in my life, but I wrote that book over a couple of years, about a year and a half. And I wrote it in like 15 to 20, maybe 30-minute increments, between 5 and 5:30 in the morning for like a year and a half. And that was how I was able to write the book. I'm a father with, I got 3 daughters. So life is full, busy and fun and exciting. But when do you write a book, right? There was no perfect weekend for me to go away and write by the sea. That never happened. That wasn't my experience as a writer. And then now with the book out, now it's okay. So how do I connect with people? How do I do that? And I've started creating videos and newsletters. So working with YouTube and doing newsletters, and that's been great because it's forced me to do a sort of consistent schedule. I would imagine similar to what you're doing with the podcast, where I've got every week there's a video that goes up on YouTube, and I've got to prepare and think, and I'm learning to connect with people through that medium, and I'm learning to connect with people through social media, which isn't a strength. I'm a 41-year-old guy. I'm learning about social media, but it's not really a strength of mine. But it's these, they're daunting things, right? This idea of, well, how do I connect with a larger audience? Well, I'm not necessarily focused on connecting with this massive audience. I'm focused on, can I improve my skills of connection to influence or improve one person's life? Can I continue to do that on a daily basis? Can I get better on a weekly basis of connecting with people? And then hopefully over time, and I've already seen it, that audience then grows, right? And continues to grow, but it takes time. And I think that a lot of people aren't willing to do, not the work. I think they're not necessarily aware of the time that it might take to grow something. You would probably speak to this with your podcast as well. Like, you're going to invest some time.
I think what you're saying is people have false expectations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Because, there's certain people that perceive something can be a bit easier or a bit shorter or quicker than how you perceive it to be. But how did you sort of understand that and maybe drill it out of your clients?
I think it's learned through experience. You can read it, you can talk about it. You're living it right now, right? And creating a podcast. So, and I'm living that now in working and creating these videos and writing this book. I heard a quote yesterday that every job seems like it's easier than your job until you get into it, until you actually go to do it, right? So you step in and you look at this job and go, well, that must be the easiest thing in the world to just make podcasts. And until you start doing podcasts, then all of a sudden, oh wow, this is actually a fair amount of work here, and good work, but work nonetheless, and time that needs to be invested. And in our culture, at least I feel like in North America, we're very much sold, even that you can be a success in 30 days, 30-day abs, and, do a juice cleanse, and, and how many advertisements do you get, Jimbo, with the podcast? We can take your podcast to be, in the top 10 of Apple Podcasts, and all you need to do is sign up for our course or whatever it is, right? Like, we want to believe that that's the truth, right? And we want to sign up for the conference, and we want to take the course, and we want to do the juice cleanse, and we want the 30-day abs. But you and I both know that that's not how it works, right? Like, it's actually, we build, through consistent and persistent action, right? Consistent and persistent, taking the steps in the right direction. But everything that's coming at you from a marketing perspective says, no, you just need this silver bullet and your life will be fixed, right? Like, you're going to be happy and wealthy and all these different things. And you just need to do this one thing. You just need to take this one course. You just need to do, go to this one conference. And I love conferences and I love courses. You can learn a lot from them. But when you have that, now you have this item, and now you actually have to take it and apply it. And I don't think that that's properly talked about. You got to apply that and be willing to apply what you learned for years at a time to actually see the impact that might be possible.
Mm-hmm. And to add to your ability to stay consistent here, you also studied at Trinity University, right? Business?
Yep.
Correct? Yep. Wow. Okay. That's impressive. So how was your sort of experience in college? Did you incorporate habits too? Or why did you even focus on business? Why was it important to you?
Yeah, I enjoy business. I work in business now. And so I did a 4-year degree with a Bachelor of Business Administration. I think what attracts me to the business community is the opportunity to be sort of working in conjunction with other people towards a goal. The opportunity to connect and to lead and to serve people. Leadership fascinates me. It's sort of a skill set, an area that I'd love to continue to grow in. And it's sort of a being in the marketplace, and you never know what opportunities are going to come your way, but learning more about business. Being in university, it's interesting. So this is long before I wrote the Sowing Principle. And I was very much a last minute paper writer and a last minute crammer for my exams. Like that was definitely my style through university. But what's interesting is I can look back on that time and see how destructive some of those habits and tendencies were, how much more difficult I made it on myself than I could have if I'd properly understood the Sowing Principle as I went into university. I mean, I kind of understood it. I knew some of the pieces, but it was a great experience. Some of my best friends were met during those years, and connections and networks were that was the biggest thing that came out of university for me, was the people that I met, the relationships that I still have and carry to this day, because business has changed, right? Business changes constantly, faster than we can, so when I graduated back in 2000, whatever it was, 7 or 8, I can't remember, but the space of business has shifted dramatically since I graduated. So what I learned from a tactical perspective in business university at business school, some of it's the same, but a lot of it's changed. But the relationships, the networks, the ability to continue to learn. I mean, that's what we go to. A lot of people, I believe, go to university for, is can you go there and learn how to think for yourself and actually make decisions? And that was a big takeaway for me from being in university, and time, I believe, well invested. You look back sometimes and wonder, but you never know, right? So
excellent. And again, so you worked in business a lot, and then you moved from business to then begin working in construction, right?
So I'm still in business. I work on the business side of a construction company. Yeah.
Okay.
So I work with a team here of about 35 people, in just outside of Vancouver. And yeah, I'm very excited to be able to support that team. So.
Okay. And you said, your business degree, some of it's changed, but some of it hasn't. So what about your business degree has sort of helped you along your way, probably in a way that somebody else who doesn't have a business degree may go through?
I think that I have a core base understanding that you can gain in university of, basic financials and understanding the core components of finance and marketing and sales and operations. Some of those core items, getting that baseline of, here are the core functions of a business. And regardless of whether you're in construction or you're in medical or you're in whatever it is that you're trying to do, if you're working on creating a brand around yourself, right, in a podcast, you need to understand sales and marketing and the operations and the technical side of things and the finance side of things. It all has to come together into this sort of cohesive unit. I think a business degree does give you that sort of baseline to be able to walk forward from and learn. You still got to get out there and cut your teeth. You can stare at all the textbooks you want, but until you're standing out there and actually trying to build something that serves the community and creates a value, it's a totally different thing.
Yes, and why the construction industry?
That's a great question. The people. It was a door that opened up, and with some great people. So I actually work with great people. The fact that we happen to be in the construction industry is a byproduct of those relationships.
Okay. Well, you talked a lot about network, the construction industry. You also upload, a short motivational video on Instagram.
Yep.
Every day, I've noticed. So why do you do that?
Yes, those go up a couple of times a week. Yeah. So what we do is right now. So I take the video that we do on a weekly basis over on YouTube. It's anywhere between 8 to 12, 15 minutes long, whatever it is that we're talking about, and then we cut that up into shorter videos. What I'm finding really interesting, and I mean, I'd totally be interested in your input in this, is with the rise of TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, whatever you want to call them, sort of these, let's call them 60-second clips of video. I've just seen this massive trend in that direction where the engagement on the 60-second sort of video is way higher than any engagement that I'm seeing across any other platform. And I find that really interesting. My goal is to be able to connect with people, to encourage them and to uplift them to go after what their dreams and goals are. The median to me doesn't really matter. Right? Like if it's through connecting with people on podcasts, if I feel like that's a great area or a great way to be able to connect with people, if it's longer form videos on YouTube, if it's shorter form videos, which I'm learning more about right now, I'm kind of going, man, this seems to be where people's attention span is. This seems to be where people are engaging with content. They're encouraged by it. I get good feedback from it. So I'm sort of investing a little bit more into that part of life going, well, if this is where people are putting their attention, then that's probably where I want to be. Right. I wrote a book because it was something that I wanted to do, but not a lot of people read books from front to back. So the book was, I'm excited about the book, very proud of the book, glad that I did the book. But not a lot of people read books these days. They listen to podcasts. They browse TikTok. They watch Reels and Instagram. So I believe I've got a message to share with people to encourage them to uplift them. I'll go where the people are.
Yeah, but they do listen to audiobooks.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I got to get it on an audiobook. Haven't done the Sowing Principle on audiobook yet. That's got to be done. Yeah, absolutely.
But you raise an excellent point because shorter videos, and again, I've noticed this as a content creator too. Shorter videos tend to be the new thing now. We sort of live in this, this microwave society where short videos are kind of the big thing now. And how did you start kind of adapting to that change of demand?
I'm still adapting, very much so. Like When I create the content that I create each week, I create a longer content video, right? So when I say longer content, I mean 8 minutes. Let's call it 8 to 10 minutes. To me, that's my long form content. So, and then the young guy that does the editing for me is a great, great guy, really talented. He's like, hey, this thing called YouTube Shorts. They're really starting to push it on YouTube. I think we should take some sections of your video and cut them down into 60 seconds and put them on there. And I'm like, great, let's try it. Let's see what happens.
Smart
And then
man.
yeah, exactly. Right. And then so I'm like, well, so if you're going to cut those videos down to 60 seconds, why don't we put them up over on TikTok and Instagram and see what they do there, right? Like, I mean, the content's there, the content's been created. I don't have to recreate content. It's already, I've already invested the time. So, but now I'm starting to think, because those videos, the little short-term videos are great, but he's kind of pulling them out of a larger section. But in my mind, I'm going, okay, can I actually be more impactful? Can I maybe clarify my message down a little better? Can I actually create 60-second videos that are fully encapsulated inside those 60 seconds? I haven't done that yet. It's kind of the next thing that I'm looking at, because he's going, we're getting some traction. We should stick with the longer form 6 to 8 minute videos once a week, but we should probably make more shorts because we're getting more engagement, which means I need to create more content, which is great. I love to be, it's like the next challenge. I'm like, okay, well, let's go learn about how are we going to do that? How can I communicate a message clearly to uplift and encourage someone inside of 60 seconds?
Great. And you were getting into YouTube a bit. So you talk about your book, you talked about, your Instagram. So what about the YouTube channel? What's the purpose of the YouTube channel?
I love the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel came up as an opportunity. I was at the point where I was about to launch the book, and I was like, okay, so I've got this, but I need to create, this, I need to work on building an audience basically, and building, people that I can connect with. And it was kind of like, well, what are my options here? I can start a newsletter. I can start a podcast. But a friend of mine had been doing YouTube videos and had built a studio. And he's like, hey, if you want to use my studio, you can use it for free. And I will introduce you to the guy that does my editing. You'll have to pay him to edit your videos, but you can use my studio. And it was just like this door of opportunity that opened up. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, he had invested in, or whatever, to build this studio. And so have the opportunity to work. And it's been over a year now. We've been creating the videos, and it was just one of those things, when things line up and you just are able to run through those opportunities. It doesn't happen all the time. I was still very nervous. If you look at the first video that I did, I'm like, oh man, that's embarrassing. But you take the first step, you create the first video, you put it out there, and you just keep going. I'd like to believe that I've gotten better over the last year, that I've gotten a little bit more confident of talking to a camera, that I've started to, get better at relaying my message. But every week it pushes me, it challenges me to clarify something into a message that I can hopefully uplift and encourage people with. And so I love that idea of YouTube, is that there is an audience there is an opportunity to connect with people there. And I'm just sort of continuing to refine and to learn of what actually connects with people and what encourages people. So that's how YouTube kind of came to be, and it's been an amazing opportunity.
Excellent. And you had one episode, and this one episode said, what makes you come alive? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what was, a key component of the advice you gave there that really hit you?
I think you probably get this question, or you've heard this question, people are saying, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do, or I'm not 100% sure what my passion is, or what my, maybe the direction that I'm supposed to be heading. And if you think about your life, I think most people would have had situations where they do something that makes them come alive. Maybe it's public speaking, maybe it's writing. And I further talked about it in other videos, but like, what puts you in that sort of state of flow where you lose track of time almost when you're doing this particular activity? What makes you come alive? And then I find that if you can identify those things in life and sort of chase them down a little bit, it might not be a passion per se at the beginning, but maybe it's an interest that makes you come alive, that you're really excited about when you get the opportunity to learn about something or to try something new or whatever it is. Can you chase that interest down a little bit and see, maybe it'll develop into a passion? You go try something like rock climbing one time and you really enjoy it and it pushes you. You're not passionate about it, but it interests you. Well, maybe you should go chase that down and see if there's something there. Go again and see if that's a direction that maybe you're supposed to be headed in, or whatever it is, because there's community there. There's people there. There's people that you can uplift and encourage. So I love this idea of, focusing in on what makes you come alive, because the world needs more people that are alive, that are on fire, that are passionate about what it is that they're doing. Because when people recognize that, I think when you're talking to people, they recognize when you're passionate about your cause, when you're passionate about what it is that you're here, believe you're here to do, and people want to be a part of that. People want to be a part of something that's bigger, that's moving, that's got momentum.
Now, when you first started writing, you mentioned that you had, this sort of a calling or this glimpse of life, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you think other people should be looking for too?
I think that you can get stuck looking for, like, if you're just constantly waiting for the perfect vision to run after, I don't think it always works like that. I think that personally, I believe that God gives me a glimpse of the direction that he would like me to head down. And then he gives me the tools to be able to go after it, but it's not the whole picture, right? When I started creating the YouTube videos is a great example. Like the first half of the year when we were creating YouTube videos, we weren't creating shorts, and we didn't think that, that wasn't even, I don't even think they existed actually when we started. I don't think they'd made them yet. I don't think YouTube had created that yet, but now that's all of a sudden, it's become more of a part of my life, and that vision and goal and dream has expanded. And, now I'm looking at other opportunities to potentially be able to speak or to be able to travel or whatever those things are. Sometimes it's taking that first step of here's an idea, here's an opportunity, here's something that you can go and to chase down, without having to wait for, well, what would that look like? I don't want, the grand vision is, I need all of this in my life, but sometimes we don't always get the grand vision. Sometimes you just get that glimpse of here's the direction that you should probably head. Maybe you should look at going to this school, or maybe you should, look at the opportunity in this city.
Okay. So I think the next thing we should get into is, do you have a website?
Yep, I do. It's
All right.
really simple. JasonAlcott.com. I might see my name there on the screen. So JasonAlcott.com. I've got a newsletter there I send out once a week. It's actually a link through to the video. And you can obviously get the book there on Amazon.ca or Amazon.com. And there's a couple other resources there as well.
Great. And if possible, could you give us a bit of a run through of the website maybe, or is it just most of the general information that we see? Because the only thing that may look different to me is maybe the about, the resources, and the contact page.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the about page, though, for people that enjoy this and listening to podcasts, I've got a handful of podcasts that I've been doing over the last 6 months. So there are links to those for those that enjoy podcasts. There's a bunch of links down at the bottom. I'm excited to add your link in the future. If you scroll down a little further, you'll see a list of the different podcasts that I've done over the last couple of months. And I love podcasts because it gives me the opportunity to connect with some really great people that are doing some really great things, and all over North America, and actually sort of global. The Son of Man podcast there. That's a young gentleman that has a clothing line, and he's based out of New Zealand. And that was a great conversation. And so fun to be able to connect with people all over the globe, which I'm sure you're seeing as well. It's an amazing way to meet people and to connect with people. So those resources, those are there. Obviously, there's a link up at the top, goes straight over to YouTube. And then for resources, I have created a couple different things, and there'll be more things created in the future. Some recommended reading, different things, pieces like that.
So what is this? Is this sort of like, is there anything more on that? Is that sort of like a small kind of blog that you do, or how does that work?
I always see the website as just sort of the foundational piece, that everything that I work on, if you wanted to find out anything about me, you should be able to find a way to get there through the website. So whether that be the YouTube podcasts or the book, it should all sort of base out of the website. That's kind of how I view my website. So the best thing on there is if you go to contact, there's an opportunity to get the weekly sort of update from me. And that's really the best way to keep in touch, because you're not going to check my website all the time, but I'd love to be able to keep in touch and keep you up to date. Right. So.
Okay. And that newsletter, what is that going to really give you?
So I send a quick link to the weekly YouTube video and any podcasts that I might have done over the last couple of weeks that have come out and been live. I'll often include a link in that newsletter as well, and it just puts it into your inbox, so you're not going to look for the information to get it right in front of you.
Okay. Excellent. Great. So, kind of getting back to you again. So, what are some of your best client success stories?
Best client success stories. That's good. It's not, I wouldn't really look at it that way as like a business. I think there's people that I've had the opportunity to connect with and to sow into over the years of talking with them. The people that seem to gain the most success are the ones that read a book and take and actually are able to do something with it. And I'm an avid reader. I love to read, but and I don't know if you do, Jimbo, but there's so many books that I've read where I've been like, this is an amazing book, and then I put the book on my shelf and I don't do anything. I don't change anything at all, and I've done this for years, right? And I'll go back and I'll maybe reread my highlights and notes and things like that, but being able to actually take something and apply it in your life, I mean, that's always the goal. And so I've definitely worked with some young people that have, put together a couple of pieces of the book or other books that I've recommended to them and taken them and found ways to apply them in their life. And that's really sort of been the key that I've found is you've got a knowledge, gain knowledge and information. It's not a lack of knowledge and information that is an issue in our world today, right? It's a lack of application. I talk about that in the book. It's what are you going to do with it? So you got great information. So now what are you going to do with it, right? So, yeah.
You are so right, because there are so many people who blow loads and loads of money on books and self-help books, and
No, totally.
they just never apply anything.
Yeah, and you're inspired, right? But you don't actually make, in 2 weeks your life looks exactly the same. You haven't changed any habits or done anything new or sort of. I'm guilty of this. I can only say this because I'm guilty of this, right? So,
Yeah, and it's like that old saying, knowledge is power. It's really application is power.
applied knowledge, right, and learned wisdom. It's one thing to make a mistake, but if you don't learn from it, if you just keep repeating the same mistake.
Great. And when you work with these people, or you said you're not a business, so maybe if you want to help somebody, who would you consider your ideal person and sort of a person that you wouldn't consider ideal?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I write and when I create, I'm always sort of talking to an earlier, I want to be able to, most of the writing and stuff that I do is for me, just to be candid, right? Like I learn the most from it. I get the most from it. So when I look at, the person that I'm ideally writing to and talking to, I'm talking to somebody that's sort of in their maybe mid to late 20s, maybe early 30s, getting started in different parts of their life, like maybe in relationship, marriage, or kids, in their career. And they're sort of getting their feet underneath them and starting to recognize the importance of the steps that they take on a daily basis. That's who I really create this content for. It's like myself back 20 years. If I go back 20 years and tell myself something, I would hand myself my book and say, hey, look, we need to apply this, and we probably need to do it sooner rather than later. There's things that are going to make a difference if we can do this. That's really sort of my ideal client or ideal person, the person that I kind of talk to when I create this content. Who am I not talking to? It's an excellent question. I think if I'm not talking to people that don't want to make any changes, or they feel that they're, people that feel like they've arrived, which I never have. That's, but generally those people aren't looking for content like this. So I find they don't find it.
Now, are you the type of person now to stand up and do keynote speeches as well, or are you more focused on social media and authorship?
I'm headed that way. That's definitely the direction that I'd like to go, is to do keynotes and more speeches in the future. I have done some in the past in different, not related to the book, but I did Toastmasters for a number of years and enjoyed that experience and the opportunity to learn to public speak. So it's definitely a direction I'd like to head in the future. Yeah.
So you're a member of Toastmasters?
Yeah, that was a great experience. So good.
Could you elaborate?
Yeah, for anybody that hasn't done it. So Toastmasters is an international organization that equips you to learn how to do public speaking, and that whether you're somebody that would actually be interested in doing it professionally at some point, which I've always considered, or just somebody that wants to, because public speaking comes up all the time in our work and school. Like you're going to be making presentations for projects, or you're making a presentation to your boss. The ability to stand up and to be able to speak in front of people is an incredibly valuable skill, and Toastmasters is a great way to learn some of those skills in a really safe place with other people that are learning those exact same skills. It pushes you and it challenges you. I love how they kind of have two components. One where you're like working on speeches that you plan, right, that you plan for, and other ones that they like ask you to make up on the spot. Like it's your opportunity to get up and speak today, and you didn't know you were going to get that opportunity, and you got to be able to think on your feet. I think that's really important, that people develop those two skill sets and both be able to plan out what you want to be able to share, but then also just be able to step up and to be able to share in a moment's notice when it's required.
Yeah, what you're referring to, I think, is called improv.
Totally. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what was your experience with improv?
I that I find great because it really pushes me the most. I think is that idea of get up and be able to share. But I love it. It very much getting on these podcasts, for example. Like we didn't pre-discuss any of the questions. I'd like to believe that I can improv, off the questions that you give me, and then we can speak to those pieces. And it always challenges me. It always forces me to clarify ideas. And it also encourages me to keep sewing good stuff into my mind. So keep reading, listening to good podcasts so that I have content to be able to discuss. It's the same thing with the videos, right? I want to keep making sure that my inputs are strong and positive so that I have good things to be able to discuss. And so you want to be continuing learning in whatever area field it is that you might get the opportunity to step up into a sort of an area where you might get to improv or speak, without having been the opportunity to be prepared.
Great. And what's the future now of your business, your goals? So when you wrote this book, right, did you think it was going to garner the level of success that it did now?
I think that yeah, it's a good question. I think it's garnered some success, and I've gotten some great feedback, and I appreciate the fact that it's done what it has. I think I'd like to write another book in the future. That would be a goal. I haven't fully fleshed out what that will be yet. I learned so much writing the first one and made a lot of mistakes, that I think I'd like to step forward and write another one day. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing with the content creation on a weekly basis. It's one of the better parts of my week when I get this opportunity to sort of push myself, challenge myself, to clarify ideas. So I love continuing to do that. And when you talk about, what makes you come alive, that's one of the things that makes me come alive, is to push and challenge myself. Every week when I record, I get really nervous. And to me, I'm starting to identify that that's a good thing. I'm not running away from that being uncomfortable, because I want to run towards it. It makes me uncomfortable, and I want to kind of run towards it. And this idea of potentially doing more speaking or speaking to larger audiences, keynotes or what have you, that makes me incredibly nervous. But I kind of want to run towards that, because I know it's going to push me. It's going to challenge me. It's going to help me to grow, to be a better man and husband and father. But right now I've got, like I mentioned, those 3 young daughters. So family is a huge part of my life. Being there for my girls is a big deal. And so that's, the next couple of years is really going to be focused on making sure that continuing to grow, I can sustain the path that I'm on, and in creating this content on a weekly basis, and still be the husband and father that I want to be. And I think that's a good track for the next number of years. And hopefully, as my kids continue to grow up, maybe there's more opportunities to travel and get on the road and see more of the world and do that with them. I'd love to do that.
You mentioned traveling, and you were talking a bit about how, you had to wrestle your toddlers into car seats and all those other things. Yeah. So you seem like a big time traveler. What's going on with that?
Well, I used to travel all the time. I used to travel for work. I worked for a company once for a couple of years where I was traveling 2 weeks out of a month on average. I was on airplanes all the time, and then all of a sudden that changed, and now I haven't traveled anywhere near as much. Plus, we walked into the pandemic, so nobody traveled anywhere. So, and my wife and I love to travel before we have kids. Now, with 3 kids under the age of 5, our travel is very much, can we drive there? So we're definitely not inclined to jump on an airplane. That seems a bit daunting at the moment. Although we should probably do it, but it seems a little daunting, because sometimes just getting the kids in the car is an absolute adventure, let alone onto an airplane. But we love to explore the world and see what's out there. I had the opportunity when I finished high school. I lived in Sweden for 9 or 10 months and backpacked around Europe. And it's amazing just getting a perspective, and you would be able to speak to this better probably than I would, Jimbo, maybe with where you've traveled. But the rest of the world doesn't always operate in the same way that I operate in my life here in Vancouver. Right? It's very different in different parts of the world, and you can learn so much from that. And I want to be able to expose my kids to that and let them see that Different parts of the world operate differently. Neither is good or bad, just that you can learn so many different things about the way that people live in different parts of the world. And there's, so many incredible opportunities once you get out and see the world outside your backyard.
It's too true. It's too true. It's like you're visiting a different planet sometimes.
Totally, right? Yeah. In a very good way.
So you mentioned backpacking across Europe. You were talking about it like it was just nothing, not a big deal.
I don't think it was a big deal 20 plus years ago. Now it seems like it's a much bigger deal, but 20 years ago that was very common. That was, at least in the circles that I spun in, to go and to take a couple of months and see parts of the world. And so yeah, I had a great opportunity to do that, and it was a lot of fun. Definitely. It was a while ago. There's parts of it that I hate to admit, I don't remember anymore. Like, what countries did you go to? I think I can list all of them, but man, that was a while ago now. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
a long time ago.
Wow. Okay. So you also mentioned when you were writing your book, there were some challenges, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Huh. Well, how did
Mostly,
that happen?
mostly time challenges, right? I think that's a big thing for a lot of people. I'd like to do X, write a book, make movies, create content, whatever, go on a hike, whatever it is that you want to do. But one of the biggest things is we think we don't have any time because we're busy. And I did one video, where I talked about, well, was busy ever your goal? Like, was that your goal in life? You're like, when I wake up and I'm X years old, I just want to be really busy. Like, that's never been a goal for me, right? Like, I've never been like, I really want to be busy, but yet life is busy. And I actually use that as an excuse for why I don't do certain things. And so I've done, various forms of this, but we make time for the things that we think are important, right? Like, I live a quote unquote busy life, a blessed life, busy life, but my wife and I still take the time to, watch an episode of The Office, after we put the kids to bed. Not all the time, not every night by any stretch, but like maybe once a week, maybe we get to sit down together and we enjoy that time together. Well, if I'm so incredibly busy, how can I carve out 30 minutes to watch a sitcom? I don't know. Well, how incredibly busy are you? You're saying that you'd like to do something. Well, how much time did we spend on social media last week? Right? Your phone tells you, at least mine does, you're on your phone for this many hours on average per day. And every time I see the number, I'm like, really? That is shocking. Like, how was I, on my phone that much during the day? Right? And for me to sit here and say, I don't have time to do the things that I believe I'm supposed to be doing. Often we just need to confront ourselves with the truth is that we just haven't prioritized it. And so with challenges with writing the book is I wanted to write this book and life was busy. So I had to make the time. I had to get up a little earlier and do what needed to be done. And so, yeah.
Okay. And I was thinking more so when you said challenges writing the book, that maybe when you were trying to hone in that sowing principle and maybe find the best approach, there may have been ways you were doing the sowing principle which may not have worked, and then you finally perfected it. If you get what I'm saying, that was a bit wordy.
Yeah, I think it's a philosophy and idea that evolved as I wrote the book, for sure. So, as it was kind of coming together and I saw the different pieces and I started to put it all together, and then I was able to look back at my life and recognize, okay, here's areas in my life where I've applied this, and here's areas in my life where I clearly haven't. And so I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but writing a book is always a learning experience. You're always going to face challenges. You're going to see things and maybe not coming together the way that you thought you would, and you have to pivot and re-clarify your ideas. And it was definitely, it pushed me for sure.
No, I see what you're saying now. So, again, and it goes back to your positive perspective, because you didn't see it as a challenge making the sowing principle. You just saw it as the sowing principle gradually evolved over time as you started to use it and apply it more to how it is now today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I like to think I love celebrating the idea of being a lifelong learner. I'm not someone who has it all figured out. I didn't write a book because I have all the answers. I wrote a book because I have an idea, concept, what I believe can impact impact people's lives. And if you read the book now, even a couple of years later, I'm like, well, I probably maybe adjust that, little bits here and there of like, I've learned more about this, and there's more to expand. I think there's more tools to be added. So
more tools like what?
Yeah, I think that there's like we talked about James Clear from Atomic Habits. I think he continues to inspire me with how he thinks about habits and learning about habits and how to apply them in your life. I think there's just these ideas of how do we face challenges and opportunities, and how can we think about them differently and allow them to see them as a way for us to grow instead of something from holding us back. Just I'm a lifelong learner. I love learning new ideas about how I'm going to step into the world today.
Right. And you repeat a lot, lifelong learner, lifelong learner. Where did that come from?
Not sure where that phrase came from. That's a good question. I want to believe that I'm not going to get to a point in life, whether it's an age or just a point in life, where I've like, I don't want to learn anything new anymore. I don't want to do that, if that's a fair statement.
I'm thinking too. I think they talk about a lot, a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. I would consider what you were saying there to be more along the lines of a growth mindset. Yeah,
that's a great book, The Mindset. Have you read that one? I was Carol Dweck, I think. It's a great book.
I think so, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, she does that fixed mindset, growth mindset. Absolutely. You're right.
Nice. And you were talking a bit more about your next book. You said you didn't have quite a bit of an idea of it, but if you could give any clues, maybe what you're thinking of is the next step. Would it be related to the Sowing Principle, or would it be something completely in a different direction?
No, I think I'm still thinking in the same vein of how can you encourage people. Right where we started out the podcast, we talked about this idea of this gap between where I am and where I'd like to be, or where I think I should be. I think there's a concept there that I would like to write about one day. I haven't fully honed out that idea, but because I think that the gap is something that we've all experienced at some point, stage, or area of our life, where there's a gap between where we are and where we think we should be, or where we believe we could be. And I think coming at life from that perspective, saying we all have this collective experience of this gap. Can we talk about some strategies? Can we talk about some tools of how to bridge that gap?
Okay. Now, when we finally get into the last part of this, what would you consider yourself? Would you consider yourself a coach or a counselor?
Oh, that's a good question. I've always seen a counselor. I'm not a counselor. My strength is not empathy. You can ask my wife. But a coach, I love the idea of coaching, and have had the opportunity to experience. My father's been a huge coach and impact in my life, and he often coaches in giving me great feedback, allowing me to make the mistakes that I need to make so that I can learn. And I've definitely seen myself as more of a coach. I'm not necessarily coming with the solution as maybe a counselor might do, but I'm more of a coach in that I'd rather help point and guide and allow people to walk through that journey of becoming more of who I believe they're called to be.
Great. All right. So this has been an excellent interview. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. It's been good to meet you.
So, are there any final words you would like to give to the audience?
I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to be here. Just, continue to listen and put great content in your mind, like this Jimbo Paris show, and you're headed in that positive direction. So, no, I appreciate all the work that you're doing, Jimbo. Thank you for creating a community that's people that are looking to continue to learn and grow.
All right, thank you, man.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to end it off here, we have a few shout outs. So we'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsor, Six Figure University. It's run by Ann Jones Bay and Kemiana Jones Bay. Both of them are focused on teaching you how to make six figures by helping you to start your own salon and also your own real estate business. The next person is going to be LifeWork Systems by Judy Ryan, and basically she is an HR superstar helping corporate businesses improve their HR infrastructure in a much more positive and humanistic way. And we also have a YouTube channel. Subscribe to that now. And finally, we have a Roku channel. This will be on Roku TV, as well as all of our other episodes too. All right, great. So I'm Jimbo Paris. This is the Jimbo Paris Show. Thank you again. Thank you for listening to the Jimbo Paris Show.